Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Let's see what we did. Just want to see if we should do a quick review of what we did yesterday. Maybe we'll do just a very quick review of what we did yesterday. I found it to be a little bit complicated. There was a brisa that the Gemara discussed yesterday, and that was the brisa of, I'm sorry, it was a member. It was a member of Rava. Rava made a statement. When there's a chain reaction of people who trip over each other, Rishon Chayiv Beniske Sheni, Bein Beniske Gufoi, Bein Beniske Memoinoi, Sheni Chayiv Beniske Shlishi, Beniske Gufoi, Avoloi Beniske Memoinoi. And the Maskana, the Gemara, the way the Gemara understood it, was that Rishon Chayiv Beniske Sheni, Bein Beniske Gufoi, Bein Beniske Memoinoi, Sai if he damaged the Sheni with his guf, Sai if he damaged the Sheni with his mamoin, the Rishon will be chayiv. Why? Because the Rishon is considered a niskal, and niskal is posheya, and therefore not only is he chayiv for damages that he does himself with his guf, that's always chayiv, it's adam amazik, but he'll even be responsible for his bor. So if he drops something and it's smashed, and that's causing the damage to his friend, thank you so much, then he'll be chayiv for that bar, even if he's mafkarit, because as we said, if you're posheya to make a bar, being mafkarit will not indemnify you, and therefore you're chayiv. But Sheni, who we don't consider a niskal, because Rava makes a distinction, the person who trips over Ruvain, he's not a niskal posheya, he's less liable. So he's chayiv b'niske shlishi b'niske gufay. Whatever his guf damages Levi, he will be mechuyev for, because that's adam amazik, adam mud la'ilam. Avoloi b'niske memoinoi. But he's not a pesheya. Therefore, his bar is not going to be mechayiv him for chiyuv mavar. And then we had a brisa on Amud Beis that the Gemara was trying to figure out how it would be consistent with what Rava said. And what it said was, Kulon chayovin al niske gufan upaturn al niske memoinon. Rava said that the first fellow, Ruvain is chayiv, sign niske gufan, sign niske memoinoi, but we have a brisa that says that even the Rishon, even Ruvain will be patur al niske memoinon. How could we understand that? So that the Gemara says, it's referring to niske memoinon if their mamoin damaged somebody else's mamoin. And vibalt, your mamoin becomes a bar, therefore, it will not be liable to pay for any damage that it does to somebody's property, to someone's kalim, because we know that you're not mechuyev for damage done to kalim with your bar. Beautiful. Now we have a new Mishnah. Right at the bottom, 4 lines from the bottom, or 5 lines from the bottom of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. Zeba b'chavisa. Reuven is coming, walking westwards on the street with his barrel. V'zuba b'kairasai, and Shimon's walking eastward on the street, and they're going to meet in the middle, and it's not going to be a destructive meeting. Nishbra kadei shalzeh b'kairasai shalzeh. The jug of Reuven got crushed by the beam of Shimon. The halach is potter. Why? Each person there had rishus to do what he was doing. Reuben's allowed to walk down the street with a chavis, and Shimon's allowed to walk down the street with a beam. And therefore, since nobody is out of place, there is no liability. However, Haya Balakaya, I'm just looking at Rashi, Pater Shalashneim Rishus Lahalach. They both had the right to be there. Well, what happened if Balakaya was Rishon, Ubalachavas Achron? So instead of them coming towards each other, they're walking one behind the other. So there's a Balakaya walking, and the Balachavas is behind him. and they're both walking. But clearly, the Bala Chavis is walking too quickly. Nishbra Chavis b'Kaira Potter. If the Chavis breaks on the Kaira, Potter Bala Kaira, because the Bala Kaira is walking, he's doing his job. He's acting normal. He's not acting out of what's typical. And what must have happened over here is this Bala Chavis was tailgating, and he went too fast, and it was his fault that his Chavis or his Kad broke. Oh, so there's going to be such a discussion. Vim Amat. That's exactly the next phase. What if the Bala Kaira suddenly stops? And we know that means, because we learned it yesterday, Amad Lafush, because he's allowed to stand Lakate, if he's allowed to stand for a moment to rejig his load. But if he did something that was not allowed, and he stopped in the street to rest, so then the halacha is, the Amad Bal Kaira, then he's going to be chai. But what if he turned on his hazard lights? He told the Bachavis, I'm about to stop. Be careful. So that's literally like turning on his hazard lights. Amoit, you should stop. Potter, then the Balkair will be Potter because he's mitigated any situation. He's warned the fellow, I'm stopping. We learned yesterday, that's also a Chiddush. Because even though I was Aymed Lof, I did something that I was not allowed to do. If I ring the bell and notify, I'm still going to be Potter. But if you remember, we had a machlokes between Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that if I didn't have to get up, if I'm anointed when I fell, I don't have to warn at all. I only have to warn when I am standing illegally, and even there, my warning will help. What if it was the opposite way? The Balchavis was walking in front, and the Balkaira was walking behind. Nishbra Chavis Bekaira. If the Chavis broke on the beam, Chayiv, then the Balakaira will be Chayiv because it means that the Balkaira was tailgating. Beam Amad Balchavis Potter. But if the Balchavis stopped unlawfully, then the Balakaira will be Potter for damages to the Chavis. But if he put his hazard lights on, and nevertheless the Balkair kept on walking in them, then the Balkair will be chayiv. And now we have the Lublina strikes again. Now this is not talking about Hanukkah, but the Gemara will introduce Hanukkah soon. If the one guy's walking with a nair down the street, he's allowed to be walking down the street. And another guy's walking with flax, and the forest fire and flax, when they get together, it's an explosive event. And then there's the same shadow that you would have regarding to a Balkair and the Balchavis you would have with fire and pishon. Now there is a little bit of discussion that the Gemara is going to have. Is don't you remember just yesterday we learned that if Reuven is walking down the street and he trips, and then Shimon trips over him, Reuven can't be responsible for Levi because Levi is going to trip over Shimon. Right? So the Gemara said the only time Reuven can be liable for Levi's damages is if Reuven was either perpendicular or on a 45-degree angle where it's possible to hit him. Problem here is with the Balkaira and the Balchavis, even if someone stops suddenly, well, why does the Balkaira have to walk right behind the Chavis? Let him walk offset. Maybe he should be chayiv because he should have never walked directly behind the guy. So that's going to come into a discussion that for some reason the Balkaira was holding it perpendicular to the road, and therefore there was no place to move. But the shaila is, what about the Chavis? The Gemara is going to bring a case where there's two Chaviyos involved, and there you have the question, why didn't they offset each other? So that's going to be an ongoing discussion. And there's a long Tosfos about it over here. That's what this long Tosfos is about. Okay, so we could look at a couple of lines just to get a gist of what's going on. Once again, it had to be perpendicular to the road. You know why? When he saw the balakaya, the owner of the chavis should have automatically moved to the other side of the street. So the reason why the balakaya is chayiv and he can't tell the balakaya why he moved to the other side of the street is because the balakaya held his beam in such a way where there's no way that the balakaya could have gotten out of the way. Well, it depends how long the beam is.
It's not the length of it, it's the width of the beam.
What do you mean?
He has room to move on the side.
Right.
The point is that he shouldn't walk right behind him.
Right. That's exactly the point. He could have moved to the side. Right. But if he holds the beam perpendicular to the street and it's a 15-foot beam, it's going to block. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was in Israel as a bacher, so there would always be afkanos and on Malchi Yisrael, and the Ger Chassidim would come out. They were dangerous. They were like big bomber tanks. So what the police would do is they wouldn't send male police officers. They would send female police officers because they wouldn't touch them. If they sent male police officers, the Ger Chassidim would beat them up and crush them. But female, they wouldn't. So what did they do? They would take a long bench out of the besmedrus, like 20 feet long. No, and they would hold it at either end of the street. They would run down the street and mow down the police officers without touching them. So that's mamish what this is. Zok to Gemara weiter. Okay, here's the shayla. Like I said, if anybody's has children or wives around, I suggest you put this on your headphones. Boy mine Rabbi Bar Nosson Merafuna. Rabbi Bar Nosson had this following question of Ravuna. And please don't ask me exactly how this happened. I don't know. Hamazik is ishtoi b'tash b'shamita. Someone is doing tashma shemitah and he damages his wife. Adam hamazik mahu. Even the b'shishkabit potter, like we saw in our Mishnah. Since I had the right to walk down the street, and there's two people coming toward each other, the Baal Kader and the Baal Akaira. Since they're both allowed to be there, we say that he's potter. Even the b'shishkabit potter, a person's allowed to have tashma with his wife. Or maybe he should have been careful. I know a guy who once cleared the shayla. He was in the doghouse. So Zok to Gemara, Amar Lei. So Rav Huna told Rabbi Bar Nosson, I don't understand your shayla. We have a before Shir Mishnah. Tinisua, we looked in the Mishnah. Shelazer rishus lahalech, v'lazer rishus lahalech. That's our Mishnah. When the person with the kair is coming opposite the person with the chavis, and they hit each other, and the chavis breaks, the balakar is not chayiv because they both had a right to do that. So too by tashmish. Since he had a right to do it, he's not mukhif in the zikin. Amar Rava kal v'chaymer. Uma yar. Yar is always representative of a case of, what do you think yar is referring to? Yar is referring to the chiyuv to go into golus if you kill somebody b'shoiking. Right? You had two people who were in a forest and one shot a bullet and it hit somebody and he didn't intend to hit somebody. I don't know if you know, the hunting law is you're not allowed to fire unless you positively identify what you're firing at. And therefore, if you ever shot a person, you'd be liable because it would have been, if you positively identified it as a deer, it wouldn't have been a person. Exactly. He didn't positively identify what he was shooting. Exactly. So I'm a my yar. The chiyuv for someone to go into golus, if he kills somebody with shoygig, the perpetrator was allowed to be operating in the forest, and the victim was also allowed to be operating in the forest. What do we say? This is exactly the same case. They both had a right to be there, just like Tashmish. They both could be there. Nevertheless, what do we say? We treat the perpetrator like he went and invaded the rishus of the victim, and that's why he's chayiv to go into golus. So So this fellow who went in rishus chaveiroi, in other words, he went in when someone's being boiled his wife. He's literally going into her rishus. Loy kol shekain. Surely he should be chayiv, not potter. So Rabbi Rav Huna said right away, it's potter from our Mishnah. For Rabbi, I have a kal v'chomer that it should be chayiv. Ella hakatani shelazer rishus lahalech v'lazer rishus lahalech. But the problem is, our Mishnah seems to say that in such a case, it's going to be potter, not chayiv. So how do we understand our Mishnah? If you have this Kal V'chomer from Yar, from someone killing B'shoigeg, that if you're coming into someone's Rishus, surely you should be Chayiv. So how do we understand our Mishnah that says if you're there with Rishus, you're going to be Potter? So tomorrow I'll tell you why. Because Hazam Tarvayu Ka'adodinin. In the case of the damage, the person with the chavis is walking. He's part of the action. He's part of the damage. He's walking towards the beam. He's not stationary and the beam hit him. He's walking towards the beam. The beam is walking towards him. They're both involved. Sai the mazik and Sai the nizik are actively involved in this damage. Therefore, we say it's potter. But hacha, but a case of bia, iu kavod maisa. He's doing all the work. V'hiloi, or iu kavod maisa. Since he's doing the work, she's not doing anything. There, the svara is that maybe you should be mechayev. And it's not fair from our Mishnah. Are you telling me that in a bia a woman is not doing a maisa? Vaksiv, the pasuk says that if a woman and a man are mezana and they're chayev kares, it says v'nichresu hanefashos plural ha'oisais mikerav amam. Both the man and the woman are going to be mechuyev kares. But if the woman didn't do any maisa, why in the world should she be mechuyev kares? And for the Gemara, and this is a massive, massive sugya, Hano l'tarvayu islu. They both have a maisa. They both have hano. They both have hano. Ihu maisa hu dekavid. He's actually doing the maisa. True, but they both have hano. And there's a big shayla of what this means. Does this mean there needs to be a maisa, but that's a t'nai, it has to have hano? But the Yam Shel Shlomo, I'm sorry, not the Yam Shel Shlomo, Rabbi Yosef. What's it? The Aston Dairaisa. Rabbi Yosef Erlanger, I think his name is. He brings many rayas that the Isser itself is the Hana. Having Hana is the Isser. You actually get, she's Mechuyev and Koresh because of the Hana. Normally, the very needs a Maisa. Hana is like a Maisa. And he brings multiple rayas that it's Hana and it's not the actual Maisa.
But the pasuk says obviously.
I understand. Having Hana is called a Maisa. It's called a Maisa.
Say that.
I thank you for
You said Isser is
Right,
enough.
thank you for poking me, because otherwise I wouldn't come out clear.
What about we have the case of Esther, where I think it was Taisvis who says Mukas Eitz, or there's a whole debate, a whole discussion.
Well, she's Karka Oilam. I don't know if she had a no.
Karka Elam. So
I'm not sure she had a no. She wasn't really a willing participant.
but there was no discussion of Ano when we were talking about Esther. That they didn't use that as a.
It could be there. Does Toysus mention that? Does Toysus mention that? That it's impossible that a woman doesn't have a nut and
No,
beginning.
no. There is the point I'm making is there's no discussion of yes Ano or no Ano. Just like Mukatzeitz, and that's it.
I don't know, but he brings up some very interesting rayas. I'm trying to remember what his raya was. That it's only the Ano that does the Isser, not the Ma'aser. Yes, this is where it is. We all know halacha we learned when we learned Hilchos Nida. Rechman l'tzlan, this should never happen to anybody. But what if someone is in the middle of being boiled, his wife, and she tells him, I just became a Nida. So the halacha is you have to freeze, you have to hold yourself on your toes and on your fingers, and you have to be parish be'aver mace. Why? What for? You're not doing a ma'aseh. Pulling out is not a ma'aseh. The teretz is the hana is the isur bia. So that's where he brings the chloride from. Why wouldn't you be allowed to pull out if it's a ma'aseh bia that creates the isur? Elamai, the isur of arayis is the hana. It's having the hana. That's the isur itself. That's one of the rayis that he brings. So it's very interesting because someone said over, Rabbi Raza spoke it out. I was half asleep trying to drive last night, but he said a very interesting thing. He said, it says, V'shomer b'nei Yisrael Shabbos, last is a Shabbos. How do you do Shabbos? You don't do Shabbos, you keep Shabbos. What does it mean you do Shabbos? So they learn that there's a mitzvah of Oynik Shabbos, and when you're having Hana from the Oynik Shabbos, that's doing. So you see, Hana is also a Ma'aseh. The Torah refers to having Hana as Lasso Yisrael Shabbos. So that's another one that arises that he tells soon. Oh, even nicht was gekent gedenken was doch gesehen. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Zok to Gemara. We're going to be learning about Shabbos today, more about Shabbos, about Einik Shabbos. We'll see how far we get. Zok to Helga Gemara weiter. Oh, I'm sorry that they put me in your seat. Akiva put me into your seat. Hoya Balkayr Rishon. What if the Balkayr was walking first and the Balchavas was walking behind him? Shmuel, I can't help but thinking we're talking about a Balkayr. So who's the only Balkayr you know that would be tailgating, would be pushing ahead? Moshe Blumenfeld. So I'm thinking of Moshe Blumenfeld rushing and someone with a bottle of Bronfen making kiddush, and the Kayr banging into the. Eric, that's right. Hoya Balkayr Rishon. Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, "Stay parish b'shus harab." We had this case already. A lot of chazara, but we're going to learn new twists on things. Stay parish b'shus harabim. There are two parish in b'shus harabim. Achas revutza. One is revutza. In other words, it's being mishana. It's not behaving normally. It's lying on the floor. The achas malechas, and the other one is walking. Bota malechas revutza. The walking one, the standing one, the one that was doing what it was supposed to be doing, kicked the revutza ketura. And if you remember, because Reish Lakish said, "Kol sheshina, kol hamishana, ubo achar rishina is potter." Even though this animal was bite, it didn't have to be bite. It's also shino. It's also karen. But since this animal is on the floor, someone who is damaging this ox becomes potter. What about revutza b'mahalachas? What if the animal that was lying on the floor? What if it kicked the malachas? There it's chayeves. So Zok Gemara Lema Messiah. Maybe we could bring a raya from our Mishnah to Reish Lakish. In other words, what does Reish Lakish say? If you're a Mishana, then you're susceptible to whoever wants to damage you. Yet you're still going to be mechuyev if you damage others. So Lema Messiah. Haya Bal Kayra Rishon. What if the Bal Kayra was walking first? The guy with the beam was ahead. Ubal Chavas Achron, and behind him was the gentleman with the Chavas. And Nishbra Chavas B'Kayra. And as we learned earlier, clearly the Baal Chavas was tailgating. Potter, the Baal HaKayra will be Potter. Why? Why will he be Potter? Because the Baal Chavas was Mishana. Right? The Baal Chavas was Mishana. He was walking too fast. The Ma'amad Baal Kayra, now the Baal Kayra was Mishana. Chayiv will be Chayiv. So this is a right to Reish Lakish. The Ahacha, the Cheravutza, the Malechas Dami, the person who deviated from what's supposed to be done. Either he walked too fast, or he stopped. He's the one who's chayiv because on chayiv. So you have a beautiful raya to Reish Lakish Shita that if someone is mishana, he's chayiv. Frek to Gemara, v'tizber hasayabai. You think that this is a raya to Reish Lakish? Not at all. Loy mistayed, loy messiah. Never mind that you can't bring a raya to Reish Lakish from our Mishnah. Elam makshanami kasha. Adrabah, from our Mishnah, it's shver on Reish Lakish. Why? Because time of the bata. What was the case? Bata. When is the behemoth on the floor that kicked the animal that was walking? When is he chayiv? The bata, because he kicked him. Hahuska memela. But if he just got damaged by itself, potter. V'masnisin the memela. In our Mishnah, the Baal HaKar didn't come and smash into the Chavis on purpose. It was memela. He did what he was supposed to do, and there was memela that could damage. Right? From Reish Lakish, it's mashma that huska memela will be potter. Reish Lakish only says if the animal on the floor was buoyant, the walking animal, there is chayiv. But if the animal tripped, it would be potter. And our Mishnah doesn't say that. V'masnisin the memela v'katani chayiv. So you're trying to bring a right to Reish Lakish from our Mishnah. Take a closer look. It's actually a kasha on Reish Lakish from our Mishnah. Zok Gemara no masnisin the paska leurcha kishalda. The Mishnah is speaking where the guy is totally across the road, and therefore you're chayiv even if it happened memela. But hacha in the case of Reish Lakish, maybe the case is the rava b'chad gisa. The animal is on the floor. You're right, it's mashana, but it's not blocking the whole street. It's only on one side of the street, and therefore there's a tiny iboilach l'skuya b'dachisa. So therefore, if your animal tripped over his animal, he would be potter. You know why he would be potter? Because he would say your animal should have walked around. There was plenty of room to walk around. If my animal kicks your animal, that's a different story. So that's where Rish Lakish says, Dafka if the animal kicks, but if your animal just trips on the animal on the ground, the owner of the animal on the ground could say your animal should have walked around. But in our case, in our Mishnah, there's no way for the Balachavas to walk around because the fellow holding the beam was blocking the entire street. So Zok Gemara, so the Reisha is neither a Raya nor is it a Kasha and Rish Lakish. We neutralize the Reisha. And let's say for the Mishnah, maybe from the Seif of our Mishnah, we'll be able to still bring a Raya from Rish Lakish. Misayela the Rish Lakish. What does the Sefer say? The Katani, Haya Bal Chavis Rishon. What if the Bal Chavis was in front? Ubal Kaira Achrid, and the person holding the beam was behind. Nishbura Chavis, the Kaira. The Chavis broke in the Kaira. We say it's Chayiv because clearly the Bal Kaira was walking too fast. He was tailgating. But Vim Ahmad Bal Chavis, not a Bal Chavis did something that was out of order. Potter, now the Bal Kaira will be Potter. Frank the Gemara, the Hacha. This is like if the Machavis stopped, right? It's like the Mahaleches banged into the Ravutza, right? Uvikatani Potter, and it says Potter. So the Kimaleches Ravutza Dami. It's like the Mahaleches kicked the Ravutza, Vikatani Potter, and it says Potter. So that's exactly what Rish Lakish said. That if the Ma'aleches kicks the Ravusa, it's Potter. So you have a beautiful raya, at least from the Sefer of our Mishnah to Rish Lakish. Zok to Gemara, that's not true. Right, you don't have a raya. You know why in our Mishnah's case it's Potter? Masnizin dechi uche kamaski. In our Mishnah, he wasn't looking to damage the Chavis. He was walking with his beam, and the fellow stopped, so he hit him. That's why he's Potter. But Hacha Amar Lei, here in the case of Rish Lakish, you don't have a raya. That if your animal kicks my animal, just because my animal's on the floor, who said that gives your animal a right to kick my animal? Amalei, the owner of the animal on the floor, will tell the owner of the animal that kicked. If you can't get around, yes, you have reshus to step on my animal. True. But levu'utebi, let's talk reshusa. Who said you have a right to dafka do damage? So therefore, we tried, both from the Reisha and from the Sefer, to bring a right to Rish Lakish's halacha, and we were unsuccessful. Our mission is not a right to Rish Lakish. It's not a kas on Rish Lakish. It's neutral. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Shnaim shayu mahalchin Rishus Harabim. There are two people that are walking in Rishus Harabim. Echad rotz, one person is running, which is out of the usual. V'echad mahalach, and the one is walking normally. Oy shayu shneim rotz, or they were both running, meaning they're both behaving out of the ordinary. V'ziku zeh, and they damage one another the other. Shneim p'turin. Now, this vihiziku is a very, very big shaila. If it's supposed to say vihiziku, if you look at the Bach, he changed it to vahusku. They got damaged by each other. Getting damaged by each other is it's maybe there you could be potter, but vihiziku is mashma that the head you damaged somebody else, that would be potter. So there's actually a discussion about if it's vihiziku or it's vahusku. But we won't get into that. Let's focus on the actual meat and potatoes of the Mishnah. Our Mishnah is not consistent with what Isi ben Yehuda said. Tanya Isi ben Yehuda Aimer. Rotz chayiv if neishu mishuna. Our Mishnah says, even though one guy was rotz and the other guy was walking normally, they're still both potter. Isi ben Yehuda says, no, rotz is not the norm, and therefore the person who was rotz, the person who was rushing and running, he's going to be mechuyev to pay for the damages to the person who's walking normally. But Isi is moida the erev Shabbos ben hashmosha so potter. If someone's running and rushing on the erev Shabbos ben hashmosha, there he's potter. You know why? Because there he's running b'rshus mitzvah. Rashi says no. Rashi doesn't say it over here. B'rshus mitzvah because there's a mitzvah to be running to Shabbos on the erev Shabbos, which we're going to discuss soon. I'm sorry? Isi is a Tana, yeah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ki Isi ben Yehuda. We pass it like Isi ben Yehuda, that if one of them is rotz, the one who's rotz, who deviated from the norm, is going to be chayiv. Frank Gemara, did Rabbi Yochanan actually say that? Rabbi Yochanan said the norm is we always paskin like a Stam Mishnah. Utnan, and we learned our own Stam Mishnah right over here. Echad rotz, v'echad mahalach, oisher shnei rotz, and pturin. So oibazoi, it's schwer. Easy when Yudah says if one was rotz, the person who's rotz is going to be chayiv. Our Mishnah says even if one is rotz, he's going to be potter. So Gemara, Easy ben Yehuda is very consistent with our Mishnah. Why is it that if one person is rotz, he's potter? Masnizim be'erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes. Our Mishnah is speaking about erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes. So here's where David says, "What do you mean? Come on, it says the Mishnah. Where did it say anything about erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes in our Mishnah?" So the Gemara says, "No, we could actually bring a rayim. We may obey from the Mishnah that the Mishnah is speaking by ben Hashmoshes." How do you see that? Mimai midakatani. Look what the Mishnah says. It has two cases: either echad rotz or shneim rotz, right? I don't understand. Why would the Mishnah tell us a case that if Shneim Rotz and they're both potter? We already told us Hashta Echad Rotz Ve'echad Mahalach potter. If one is running, the other one's not running, it's potter. So Shneim Rotz Mibayim. So it must be that there's two different cases in this Mishnah, and there's more to the Mishnah than what meets the eye. This is what the Talmud must be telling us. Echad Rotz Ve'echad Mahalach potter, but not always. Just like Isi ben Yehuda said. But if it's Bechoil, where Rotz is not the norm, and the person's Rotz will be Chayiv, Echad Rotz, Echad Malach would be Chayiv. But Shneim Rotz, and if they're both equally deviating from the norm, then Afilu Bechoil Pturin. So you see from the Mishnah when they obey, that at least one of the cases, the first case, is referring to a case of Erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes, where people are rushing. Omar Mar. Umoide isi be'erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes shel potter lepnei sherotz prishos. Frank the Gemara be'erev Shabbos my prishosika. Vos Shabbos you're supposed to run. Where did you get this concept from? Did you supposed to run on the erev Shabbos? Where did this come from? Zok the Gemara Rab Chanina. The Amar Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina said this is an unbelievable couple of lines. The Amar Rab Chanina boyu v'neitzei Likras Kala. Before Shabbos, he used to announce, Boyu v'neitzei Likras Kala. Let's go out and greet the Kala. It is. As a matter of fact, it's printed in the Sidurim by the end of the Chadaydi, and this is the Makar of the whole Chadaydi. Rabbi Shlomo Al-Kabitz, who wrote the whole Chadaydi, it's based on this Gemara.
For the last capital.
Yeah. That's right. It's before Mizl Nova. That's right. Okay. Boyu v'neitzei, Rashi says very key words. Ka'adam hamakabel pnei melech. This is a very, very revealing Rashi that it's ka'adam hamakabel pnei melech, and we're going to get to that in a second. Boy, when nature looks kala malkusa, v'amrila likras Shabbos kala malkusa. Those who say that it's not just likras kala malkusa, it's likras Shabbos kala malkusa. Rabbi Yanai nisatei fikoi. Rabbi Yanai didn't go out and say we're going to go to Kala. We're going to wait for the Kala to come to us. We're not going to go out to the Kala. The Kala is going to come to us. Yeah, so the Gemara discusses the different begadim people used to wear. I'm sorry?
Mishnah could be according to Ramyana, because they're running. They wouldn't be running.
I'm happy you brought it up. I'm very happy you brought it up because everyone thinks, punch out of the Gemara, why you're running? You're running, you gotta get ready for Shabbos.
This is running to be Shabbos Malchus.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they're not carrying it,
the
right?
Mepharshim tell us that they're both not. And what's happening over here is a whole different story. What's happening over here is if there's a whole bunch of kashas on Shabbos. Why is it that we have Kabbalah Shabbos? We don't have Kabbalah Yom Tov. You ever have Kabbalah Yom Tov? We have Kabbalah Shabbos. Why do we have Kabbalah Yom Tov? Right? We sing Shalom Aleichem by Shabbos. I'm sorry?
Shalom Aleichem Shabbos but Yom Tov, the Yidden are Makabel Yom Tov. And Shabbos comes down.
Also, by Yom Tov there's Simcha. By Shabbos there's Oynik. What's the difference? So it's already 6:38, so I can't spend too much time on it. But Shabbos is the day that came complaining to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Sunday has a zivug Monday, Tuesday has a zivug Wednesday, Thursday has a zivug Friday. What about me? So the Rebbeinu Shalom said, your zivug is going to be Klal Yisrael. So you're going to be like Klal Yisrael. And on Shabbos, what's happening on Shabbos is we're being makabel. The Rambam explains that on Shabbos we're literally being makabel the Shechina itself into our households. We're being makabel the Shechina itself into our households, and therefore on Shabbos we have to make our house into a mikdash ma'at. And there's very many similarities between the Beis Hamikdash and our houses on Shabbos. For instance, our houses have neiros, right? The Beis Hamikdash had neiros. On Shabbos, there's a mitzvah to eat basar. In the Beis Hamikdash, that's all I ate. They didn't eat pizza and sushi in the Beis Hamikdash, right? In the Beis Hamikdash, they had ketayers. What is the ketayers of our homes? Ketayers creates an ambiance. You know how we do the ketayers? By having a house that's peaceful, that's quiet, that's tranquil, that's serene. And that's how we have to bring in the Shabbos. And they learn Pshat. You know why they're running? I think the Rambam says they're running so that when Shabbos comes, they'll be able to sit and relax and not move. No, they want to get home early because they have to have time so that when Shabbos arrives, everything is still, everything is tranquil. Because that's how you prepare your house to greet and host your Rebbeinu Shalom. And that explains also what type of litvak invites a malach in and says, time to go, Teis Cham L'Sholom. Right? That people don't say Teis Cham L'Sholom. You're inviting in, you barely started, you didn't serve food yet. You're throwing them out? What's going on? So they're masber. So their masber is the malachim are letting you home. But you know you have at home? You have the Rebbeinu Shalom, you have the Shekhinah himself. So you tell the malachim, I'd love to host you now, but I have the Rebbeinu Shalom in me. So your place is not to be here. Right? And you see that also in the Beis Hamikdash. Because when the Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it says, V'chaladim lo yir b'oil moed b'vayil HaKodesh. Even a malach wasn't allowed to be in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Why? Because when we're being miyachad with the Rebbeinu Shalom, nobody's allowed it.
They look like people.
That wasn't Shabbos. That wasn't Shabbos. That wasn't Shabbos. Okay, go on. So
It's not
Mamish Shechina. Yeah. Okay, so let's go weiter. Hamivakeya Rishus Harabim. Someone is hacking holtz. He's hacking holtz in Rishus Harabim. Vehizik Rishus Hayochid. And it's what?
Actually hacking
Hacking, and the piece went flying, and it damaged somebody who is in Rishus Hayochid. Or he was hacking holtz in Rishus Hayochid. Vehizik Rishus Harabim, and the piece went flying and damaged something Rishus Harabim. Or Rishus Hayochid, he was hacking holtz in his Rishus Hayochid. Vehizik Rishus Hayochid Acher, and it did damage in somebody else's Rishus Hayochid. Chayiv is going to be Chayiv. I'm sorry?
Famous.
That's right. That's right. Shakmo Shricha. Why do we need all these different cases? At the end of the day, you hack out, you hurt somebody, you got to pay. Zok the Gemara as follows. There I understand why you're Chayiv. Mishum the Shchichi Rabbim. You can't place flying projectiles into Rishus Harabim. The chances are you're going to hurt somebody. There's people there. It's a busy place. Maybe if you're hacking the Rishus Harabim and the pieces are flying in the Rishus Hayachid, what are the chances that someone's going to get hurt? Chances are it's going to be quiet. No one's going to be there. I would have thought I'm not chayiv. Kamash alone, you're chayiv there as well. And if it only says Rishus Hayachid, I would say, you know why there it's chayiv? What business do you have setting up your hacking enterprise in the middle of the street? The Rishus of it, you're allowed to do this type of work in your own property. Maybe you shouldn't be chayiv. That's why the Mishnah has to tell us sai when you're hacking in Rishus Hayochid and sai when you're hacking in Rishus Harabim. And even if we had those two cases, I would say if you're hacking in Rishus Hayochid, the flies into Rishus Harabim, you're chayiv because you're pesheya because you should have known someone's going to get hurt. And when you're hacking in Rishus Harabim, it's because you had no right to hack there. But what if you're hacking in your Rishus Hayochid and it goes flying into somebody else's Rishus Hayochid? And sides may carve Rishus, a maloi, maybe he shouldn't be mechuyev in those damages. So to the Mishnah Tricha Adam Mudolim Mechayim. Tanarabana. Hanichnas lechanusay shel nager. You walked in to a carpenter's workshop. Shaloi Rishus, da Rishus. You know, everyone knows that when you go to the mechanic and you want to walk in to see that they're not really changing your oil, that you're saying they're changing your oil, They say, insurance regulations don't allow you to go in the back, right? So here he violated insurance regulations. He walked into the back. Vinitza bikas, a piece of wood or metal went flying. V'tipcha upon it, and he died. The loch is putter. Let me ask you a question. What would you say? Pashas means he died, and the nagar is putter from going into Golos, right? Because he didn't do b'meis, it was shayk, right?
That's what it is.
What?
That's what goals is for. B'shogeg.
But that's only b'shogeg if it's like a yar. If we both had a right to be there, but you didn't have a right to be there, right? You came into my property. Zog the Gemara b'mnichles pershos. What if this fellow came in with rishos? He had permission to be here. Knock, knock, come on in. Then chayiv. Then the person would be chayiv and golos. So that's what the Mishnah says at face value, but we're going to now change the whole pshat of it. My chayiv. What does it mean? V'mnichnas pershos chayiv. Amar Yosy b'chanina. You're not chayiv and golos. You're chayiv b'dalad varim. If the person did not die and he got hurt, you have to pay dalad varim. Which dalad varim do you have to pay? Rashi says chayiv dalad varim im loy meis elohuzak. He only got damaged. Noisin loy nezek tsar ripui v'sheves, but not boishes. Why? The havalei poisheya. Al boishes loy de nechayiv al boishes ache yischavim. We learned unless you have kavanah to throw this at somebody, even if you didn't have kavanah to be mavazim, but yet kavanah to do the ma'aseh, you are not going to be chayiv. Well, that's good. V'reisha de shaloi b'shus potter. When the reisha de shaloi b'shus potter, it means midalad dvarim. It means midalad dvarim. The lekap shia aval nezek chayiv. So now Rashi is exactly touching on what Dubi's mentioning. It does say in the reisha mace, and it says potter, and Rashi saying their potter means potter midalad dvarim. So it says umeis, but lemaisa we're talking about a halacha where he was only damaged. And that's an important point to bring out. But Rashi is there. If he didn't have a right to come in, I'm still chayiv on nezek. You know why I'm chayiv on nezek? I had no right to come in because adam mud lo'ilam. Aval nezek chayiv kedekayim alon petzach espachol lachayiv ala oynis cross. Zok to Gemara right. V'mnichas b'shos chayiv my chayiv. I'm a bishik b'chanina chayiv b'dal varm upater migolos. So what we just learned now that in the sefer was nichas b'shos he's chayiv b'dal varm, and he's pater in golos. And if he came with our shus, he's also potter and golos, and he's only chayiv in nezek and not on anything else. Why? Lefishein doimel yar. It's not doimel to the case of yar. That's how we know. That's how we know. That's how we qualify the chiv to golos. Yar zeh l'rshusay nichnas, zeh l'rshusay nichnas. Each person had an equal right to go into that area, and that's where this damage happened. But zeh l'rshus chaver nichnas. In our case over here, if I let him in, right? If I let him in, I'm still part of him golos because I let him in. So let me ask you a question. Where would you say you're more liable? Where you didn't let him in, you just had a right to be there in the forest with you, or when you actually let him in? Where would you say I should be more liable?
Let him in.
When you let him in. So, Frank the Gemara, what the Besvar is that? We say Nasa Commission Nicholas and Das Chaveir. We look at it like he has permission because he had a right to be there, and therefore you go to Golos. Here I let you come in. Avada should be chayiv. Loy kol shekain. So what is your svar, Rabbi Yosy Bechinin, to say that there won't be a chayiv Golos? Elo Omer Rava, my potter mi Golos. You know why you potter from Golos? Not because it doesn't qualify. Adarabah. The loy sogelei the Golos. You let a guy in and you weren't careful. Golos isn't going to potter you. Golos isn't going to potter you. So you're not going to get Golos because it's not going to potter you. You know, there's a very big shiloh. We say, Ein oinchin min adin. You don't give somebody an oinch based on a kal v'chayim.
Saying he's amazing.
You know, he's horrible amazing. So he's nish there. There's no prescription for him. So he's got to do tshuva. So there's a famous shiloh. We know that halacha Ein oinchin min adin. You cannot give somebody an oinish using a kal v'chayim. And there's many different svaras why. One of the svaras is because you might be making a mistake. If your logic is wrong, you would have killed the guy or given malchus for nothing. But there's another svar ben enchim in. If it's a kal v'chomer, it means you want to apply an onish from a lesser avera to a bigger avera. Maybe that's not good enough of an onish. That's mamish what this svar is. Maybe it's not a good enough of an onish. The hainu time of Rabbi Yosy b'chanina, that is the svar of Rabbi Yosy b'chanina. Mishum the havel is shoygeg karav l'meiz. So we now know a new rule, a big chiddush, and Dovi highlighted it. Shoygeg karav l'meiz is exempt from Golus and he doesn't get killed. It's in the middle. It's a new category that Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina has just created. Zok Gemara, Meisiv Rava, Hoysav lo Ritu Achas. What if there's someone who works for Bezin and he's giving the guy Malchus, and you're supposed to give him 14 Malchus because they assess the maximum amount of Malchus he can handle and he won't die because of it. And he said, you know what, I'm going to give him an extra one. 15 instead of 14. Umeis. I'm sorry? Okay. So he gave 12, he gave 13. Umeis, and now he died. The Allah raised a guy that the Shliach Bezin goes into Golos. Al Yodai because of this. That's Zichar Shaga Karvel Mezid. He didn't want to kill the guy, but he knew that he knew the guy was a sin. Right? So how can he go into Golos? The boy Asuka Daite, the Maisi Inish, Inchi Bichad Ritua. He should have known that they assessed him for the maximum, he went over the maximum. Because then they raised a goyla. So this is shver on Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina. Because Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina said Shayil Karvel Mezid does not go into Golos. Here we have a case that goes into Golos. No, it's not a Shayil Karvel Mezid. It's a real Shayil. He got confused in counting. So he didn't dafka want to give him an extra one. He made a mistake in counting. Oh, Gavaltig. So Tavach le Rabba b'Sandali. Either Rabba took his shoe and he hit Rab Simi, or he kicked Rab Simi, or he banged on Rab Simi's shoe. And he told him there's two pshat. Either he hit him with the shoe, that's the second pshat in Rashi, or the first pshat he tapped him on the shoe. Amalei told him, who money? Would you think the Shliach Bezin counts? As Shmuel suggested. Vatanya Gadol Shabadayanin Kairei. He calls it. Vasheni Moina, and the second person counts. Vashlish Yomer Hakeyu. It's almost like the mimer from Absham Shemash Tripoli, right? Yomer Vayaka. So there's a whole chain reaction over here. So he couldn't have made a mistake in counting. Oh, you're right. The Dayan was Toya because that I listened, and the Shlich Bezin listened. That's Mamash Shoygig. I don't know why it's not an Oynish. Let the Shoygig goes to the Golos for that. He should have listened carefully. Maybe he should have listened carefully. Okay, Zokim about to Meisvei. Hazorik Esa Eben Lushus Harabim. Someone throws a stone. Oh, it's 6:51. Should we stop here? Okay, we'll stop here. We'll be Mamshach tomorrow. We're Mamshach in the middle of a Gemara over here. Okay, we'll have to do it. The mimer on the Erev Pesach. It talks about the malachs that hit and then they hit. It's all with the tzivu. It's a whole chain of reaction like over here too. Okay.
That's in the case of Karvel Mezid.